Pinterest is your enemy, and here's why. This is you. You finally got out of art block, you're ready to draw, or maybe you're already drawing and you're like, dang, I need a reference. I'm ready. I'm going to go grab one. And then you get on your phone and you open Pinterest and you're scrolling. And you've done binge scrolling for maybe about 2 hours now. And you're like, oh, but I'm so close. Like I've got 4 different boards of the same person twisted around with their arms crossed, leaning over a table. And yet you're still stuck and nothing's really kind of hitting the spot that you want it to be. So let's have a look at that phone and figure out why that is the case. This is probably your boards, or at least when you open up Pinterest. It's probably just maybe a random portrait, a random pose, a random Hatsune Miku, and then a random comic panel. And while this isn't completely bad, you just can't deny that you've probably opened Pinterest one time to look for a reference and then got stuck instead building boards or seeing something beautiful and getting sidetracked. It's just, again, not great for when you're finally out of art block and you're ready to draw and you get just warped back into the algorithm-based apps. Another thing that I tend to see is artists who use Pinterest maybe as their point of reference. Their artwork seem a little bit flat or copied, and this isn't negative at all, because if you're just doing this as a hobby as well, or you're not necessarily freaking out about wanting to grow or wanting to get better in anatomy and drawing and that sort of stuff, it's completely fine. But if you are, again, I just don't think Pinterest would be the best point of reference because things tend to look flat. For example, in the drawing that I've done here, like if you were to do 2 characters, interacting with each other, you wouldn't necessarily want to copy that just based off what someone else has done of their own 2 characters. You would think about your own characters' behaviors, how they feel around each other, what are they holding, is there other objects, and why are they in this scenario, like what type of background are they in. You'd be thinking more about like perspective and lighting choices and the angle. You wouldn't just do the same thing that someone else has done because that was specific to their own character. But I do want to say I'm not against Pinterest at all. I use it all the time. I enjoy it. It's inspirational. It's great for mood boards and collaging and that sort of stuff. I don't think it's a negative app. I just think it's not the best app for, especially if you're midway through a drawing and you need a reference. You'll just be scrolling for hours. And obviously, artists have a lot of art block, and when they finally have that creative juices flowing and they're ready to draw, you don't want to have to ruin that by scrolling through Pinterest trying to find a reference. Let's move on from Pinterest now and focus on why your art isn't improving. And it's also a kick to myself because I feel like I've hit a wall with my art recently, but it's because you're not studying correctly. Let's go back to you. You're finally ready to draw. You're thinking I should get a reference, but we're just not going to open up Pinterest. Instead, I've got 2 things to show you. One of them being Line of Action. It's this free website where basically it has a whole gallery of things. So like figure drawings, hands and feet drawings, animals, expressions, still life, environments. Honestly, this list goes on. But once you choose what you prefer, you can change it to have, like you can basically just customize it to have like feminine, masculine. You can even have a timer so it feels like an actual live drawing class. And it'll just bring up a whole bunch of drawings and they're all random, but you can scroll through if you don't want to do the timer and just have a whole bunch of drawings at hand, specific to what you want, obviously. The second one that I have, which is also free, is called Pose My Art, but it's a 3D gallery instead. Again, it's just another website that I found, and you can scroll through, you pick a pose. I would recommend picking a pose that's generally what you're after. So if it's someone sitting down, pick the one that's closest to that. But then you can actually just change it. There's all these joints and rigged components to it, and you can change the perspective. So this was really good as well for like web comics and stuff. But you can have like a low angle shot of someone covering their belly and let's say like they're bleeding out, dying. So that's a great pose. There you go right there. Once you finally have your reference though in your drawing, it is kind of hard to stay motivated or inspired, especially if you need a mood board or an overall theme. If you're not going to use Pinterest for this part because, again, you have no self-control like me and you scroll for too long, you can use character design references, which is such a great tool to have just in the background while you're drawing and you can scroll through. It's a website and it just showcases a whole bunch of artists. It has interviews about them while showcasing their artworks, and it just explains like there's questions of how did you get into industry, what made you fall in love with art, when did you start, what do you do to keep motivated, like a whole bunch of stuff that's just super great. And the artwork is all amazing, obviously. There's also portfolios of artists like Sam Does Art and Alex and all these beautiful artworks. And it's really, really great to keep up because you can also see how they use color and like expressions, what their overall art style looks like. So just a really handy tool as well to keep up instead of maybe going to Pinterest or Instagram or Twitter. The second reason your art is probably not improving as fast as you'd want it to is because you're doing too much. And by doing too much, you're probably doing too much at the same time, and you're keeping yourself up at night, freaking out about not being able to know perspective, color theory, background art, a whole bunch of stuff, illustrations, paintings, storyboarding. There's just so much, and your head's probably clouded, or at least I know mine is, because I just feel like I'm behind all the time. What I would probably say is look back at your own art, and I'm going to do this here as well. This is a drawing I did in 2019 where I was just kind of going with the flow. I was drawing, I was enjoying what I was doing. I wasn't freaking about everything that I don't know. But what I realized is I obviously needed to study because the shadows that I had here were really muggy, the lighting was wrong, the proportions were all off. But instead of just freaking out and doing everything at the same time, because that would be no help at all to me, I would sit down and focus on the things that I wanted to get better at a time. So I would do studies on color, and I'd focus on how, like, the reds, for example, in this photo would match with the oranges and her skin color and how it all blends perfectly together. And then also lighting and seeing how color would react to different lighting, focusing on color theory a little bit more. I could finally get to a point where I felt comfortable enough to show people my art because I actually thought it looked pretty good. My style is a bit stylized though. It's a bit, I guess, more comical. So I'm not too realistic when it comes to color and proportion. So eyes will be bigger, lips will be bigger based off my art style. But again, if we were to do it with this artwork that I did, it was one of my first bubble line drawings that I've ever done. Still roughly around that time, like 2019. I started just doing heaps of figure drawings and anatomy drawings, and obviously in the beginning it just looked really stiff, but as I kept going, things started coming through and flowing, and I would take references of myself, expressions, really just focusing on line work as well, shape language, and I finally got to a point where I felt more comfortable, where I could do two characters interacting with each other and it didn't seem so messy. It just worked. And what I'm trying to get out with that is if you look back at your old art and see what you've improved or you feel like you haven't improved that much on, that's what you should be focusing on. Those two drawings that I keep looking back at, I know I need to keep focusing on lighting because I don't think I've improved that much. Same with anatomy with that bubble line fan art. And if you do feel like you can't necessarily study on your own or you need more support, we're obviously in this beautiful world where YouTube exists and there's channels like Cynic's Design. Each video is a specific part, but it's a whole playlist for like anatomy, and it's painting, sketching, and they go through it very, very thoroughly, which is great. And they're not too long as well, because I also find myself, if it's a 4-hour long video, I feel like I haven't actually done anything because I didn't finish the video. But if they're quick tips, I feel like, yep, I've taken that and I can rewatch that video over and over and kind of push it into my head and study it properly. There's also great channels where they will just kind of show the entire process, which is like a whole time lapse. It's all free, obviously, because it's on YouTube. But like Modern Krebs does this with their like concept art time lapses, and you can see how they either use 3D or the way that they have all their layers, lighting, shadows. Like, it's just great to see how someone else does something so you don't feel like you're not doing something right, or at least you can kind of just take that little piece and be like, oh, I can do it this way instead of the way that you were doing it from before. Maybe it's quicker, maybe it's not, but at least you're trying new things and kind of gaining that palette. If you're the type of person, though, that can't study on your own and you need classes or a teacher or just some more guidance, there's a whole bunch of stuff online. One that I can recommend, though, is Project Study that I did. I think it costed me about $300. It was a few years ago. The only downside really is that I'm in Australia, so everything was in American time. And that was a little bit hard because I had to wake up at like 2 a.m. to do them. But that was super, super helpful. The artists are amazing. There's Discord servers where you can share your artworks. At the end of a class, usually, you can share your work. So it's just super great to get feedback. And yeah, just highly recommend. Another reason why your art isn't probably improving as fast or as good as you hope it would is because you're too hard on yourself. No matter what, you're just going to keep thinking you're not good because you just keep comparing yourself to someone else. If you've just done an artwork and you're super happy about it, dancing around the room, but you open up social media, Instagram, ArtStation even, and someone's artwork is just 20,000 times better than you, and the bio or the caption says, by the way guys, like, I'm 12 years old, and it just crushes you and everything just feels worthless, you need to work on that, because the only person you should really be comparing yourself to is your past self, seeing the progress you've made. Also, if you're comparing yourself to your past self, think about how your younger self would be when they look at your drawings. They'd be freaking out about what you can do now. The poses, the gestural stuff, the expressions, the stuff that they couldn't do. They were doing stick drawings and they would be parading it around the house, saying, look what I drew, look what I drew, look what I drew. And just going crazy. So if you're kind of still stuck, feeling really low about it and thinking you don't know about all these other things, perspective and all this other stuff, just chillax, your past self's looking over your shoulder somewhere. Also, I don't hate Pinterest. I love Pinterest. I use it all the time. I just think because it's such an algorithm, obviously, based app and it's based off what you search, at the end of the day, it's just going to be super addictive. And if you're drawing at the moment, I hope your drawing goes really well. But, stop scrolling. Get off your phone. And stop procrastinating. Do your drawings. But thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I love you.